We've been hearing a lot about the sex recession the last couple of years, but here's the thing. Sex on screen, it's back, baby. There's been this whole heated rivalry thing, of course, and then there's a new season of Bridgerton and the new Wuthering Heights, which is supposed to be very steamy, just made 83 million globally in its opening weekend. But behind the literal scenes, those coordinating intimacy are intimacy coordinators. And this was a job that was one of the big wins of the Me Too movement. Here's the thing. Every once in a while, you hear a little question mark about the job. So, for example, Gwyneth Paltrow, she was one of the high-profile voices in the Me Too movement. Recently, when she was on her press tour for the Oscar contender Marty Supreme, she sort of implied she didn't know intimacy coordinators really existed until she started working on the film. So today I'm going to sit down with a Hollywood intimacy coordinator, Yehuda Dueñas. We're going to talk about the state of this very new industry and talk about how we tell the story of sex on screen.
What actors do is they're poeticizing the most difficult moments of the human condition. That's what drama is. And so acting is not comfortable, but it should be professional. You're not going to improvise a car crash.
Yeah.
And,
When people ask you on a flight, what do you say you do?
My name's Yehuda Dueñas. I'm an intimacy coordinator, which means that I help films and productions navigate intimate scenes in film and television.
Have you stopped telling people what you do? Or
I've totally stopped telling people what I do.
No. What kind of questions were you getting at first?
Well, sometimes they ask, is that like porn?
Right.
And I say, no, it's for film and television. It's, shows that you see on Netflix and HBO and Paramount Plus. And whenever you see an intimate scene or a sex scene or anything like that, there's usually someone now, more commonly, there's someone on set helping to shape and navigate those scenes. And that's what I do. We created our first contract with SAG-AFTRA. And so we have a new division at SAG-AFTRA, and we're a unionized position now. And a lot of us have also been doing this work for a really long time. I first started this practice in 2007 and doing theater in New York. And I wasn't the only person. I was the only person I knew at the time doing it, but there were others as well around that time. So it was really part of a zeitgeist that built
Do you mind telling
slowly
me
over the years.
the origin story? Was it one of these things where you were working on a particular show and someone was like, we don't know what to do? Or who was the person who said, hey, could you help us with this?
Yeah, no, it was me saying, hey, we need to figure out a way to safely do this, because I was directing a play that had some very extreme, violent, sexual, incestuous content. And I had been involved in a couple of shows where a director just did not know how to handle intimacy. And so the director would tell you, why don't you and your partner go out into the hallway and, work something out and come back and show it to me, which has a lot of problems wrapped up inside of that. There's a lot of issues there. And I've had friends who have had really terrible experiences with that. Mine weren't terrible. They were just awkward. And I just knew that we needed a structure to do it. And I started figuring out ways to do that with performers and creating a system and a protocol for it, enlisting them as collaborators in the process, and creating these stages and systems of how to do it.
I don't know if I should start with what you do or how people complain about what you do. But we've now reached a point where every A-list actress in particular gets asked when they're on a press tour, hey, did you use an intimacy coordinator? There are some sex scenes in this thing. And we're going to give people a moment to move on, if you're listening to this, to the not kid-friendly part. Because I think it would help if people just understood one or two mechanical things before we heard why some actors or actresses have objections.
Absolutely. So I tell people that my job is to handle the intimate moments in film and television the same way that a stunt coordinator would handle dangerous moments. I work with a director to understand their vision. I communicate with the actors to understand their boundaries or concerns, if there are any.
So let me decode some of that. It sounds like the first thing you said is you actually look at the script
Oh, yeah,
and figure out what's the point of this sex scene, which for many of us who grew up with sort of pointless sex scenes or pointless intimacy scenes that are kind of just backdrop to see a nude person, like sometimes I don't think that's been given very much thought. So it sounds like one of the things is just being like, what does everyone expect to get out of this?
I would say yes to that, but we don't editorialize. And we really want to know the vision. Like we're really not there to criticize the scene. We want to professionalize these scenes. So we want them to be, and we want actors not to be hothouse flowers. Acting is not comfortable, and it shouldn't be comfortable. Acting, what they're doing, what actors do is they're poeticizing the most difficult moments of the human condition. That's what drama is. And so acting is not comfortable, but it should be professional. Like you're not going to improvise a car crash.
Yeah.
And, I'm not
I'm glad you're bringing this up.
When we create nudity and simulated sex riders, we do them for every scene. And so because consent needs to be specific to every scene, and because an actor agrees to, let's say, nudity and simulated sex in one context of one scene, that doesn't mean that in a next episode or in a different scene of a film that they will agree to the same thing. Maybe the context has shifted. I'm just giving a couple of, there's lots of different reasons for someone to possibly feel comfortable in one scenario and not in another scenario.
Yeah.
And so consent is specific to each scene. And so we will talk with the director about each scene that we pull out of a script, that we flag in a script. Once we get the director's vision, we'll then talk with the actor and we'll say, listen, this is the creative ask. And how are you feeling about it? And the actor might say, yep, great, all good. Or they might say, yes, but I actually, I don't want to show this part of my body. Or they might say, just don't want to show this side of my body because I have an injury or because of, body awareness or something like that. And so we really help facilitate those conversations. That conversation then gets put into a nudity and simulated sex rider.
And rider meaning this like legal clause that gets added to the contract that's like, hey, we worked it out officially. And also if you're in violation of that, I can sue.
Exactly. And so it's really, yes, they can sue. It protects the studios, it protects the actor, but it also psychologically creates a legal document of understanding where this is what we're going to agree to. This is what are we allowed to do? What are the edges that we can play to while still keeping an actor's boundaries intact? The creative team has every right to any creative decision they want. They can write anything. And that's beautiful. That's the creative process. And an actor also has a right to say what they will or won't want to do with their body. And there's also 100,000 ways to shoot something. And there's even more ways to tell a story.
How many times have you had to give this speech? Like convince someone like, hey, I'm not here to create problems.
Less and less, actually. I feel like as it's becoming more common. I mean, we're part of the industry, and we have been for a while, and we're now a unionized part of the industry, and we're, protected by SAG-AFTRA. Like we have a SAG-AFTRA.
But all that's really new. Like it may be something you've done for a while, but having it registered, protected by the actors, all these things are relatively new.
Very
so when
new.
you do have pushback, what does it sound like?
We're not coming in saying this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. Like that's not what we're there for. But in the same way that a stunt coordinator would say, all right, we're throwing this person through a window off a tall building. What do you want this to look like?
And no one goes, that'll really mess up the vibe of throwing them out the window.
Right.
We were hoping they'd wing it.
Right, exactly. And,
yeah, or it's human nature to respond when you get slapped. We just thought they'd start fighting. Like there's
right, yeah, figure it out, go punch each other and figure it out. And, I also want to point to sometimes when we bring up this, I don't know if it's an argument, but like this parallel, there's like, well, that's not the same. Like, that's not the same. Like someone could get really hurt or really injured. But, we're humans, and we all have experiences with intimacy, and we all have really different hidden experiences with intimacy. And so we're saying that there's a different type of injury that could happen when trust is broken on a set, or when intimate scenes, happen in a way that it is harmful. And everyone, you just don't know what people's histories are as well.
Well, we're starting to know, right? I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this as a business is it is known at this point as one of the legacy sort of things that came out of the Time's Up Me Too movement, which was disproportionately sort of rooted in Hollywood because of Harvey Weinstein and
Mhm.
then all the stories that actresses in particular started to tell. So it all leads back to this particular road of these moments. And this is one of the few concrete things that came out of that moment. But it's not, everyone is not all in agreement that it's an unmitigated good for it to exist as a job.
No, I guess not. I mean, people might not all agree, but I think that what people can agree is that we need professional standards around these types of scenes. And so that's really what we bring into the table, is that we're professionalizing these scenes. So it's not about should I have this or shouldn't I have this. I'll give you an example. As you are coming in for this kiss, pause for 2 seconds before you connect lips and look at each other. Just that simple thing could really just amplify the story of a kiss. And it's really just a functional choreographic thing to say. And so we can really help a director, a production, a showrunner, and actors navigate these things. And now also a lot of times actors know how to do this stuff. And they've been some actors that I work with, they're like, listen, I've been doing this for years. I know how to kiss someone. And I say, great. I'm here if you need me. We want to create a sense of freedom on set, not a sense of stifling.
So let me run through some of the criticism, because I think it would be sort of good for people to hear this. So there's the world of what I would call the sort of old timers who they get asked this question. And an example, famous one, is the actor Sean Bean. He was asked about intimacy coordinators, and he's like, it would inhibit me because it's actually drawing attention to stuff. And if people say, do this, put your hand here, he says, quote, I think the natural way lovers behave would be ruined by someone bringing it down to a technical exercise.
I mean, the first thing I'll say to that specific quote is that actors are not lovers. They are at work. Actors are telling a story of love. They are not the actual lovers involved in the scene. They are performing the love in the scene. And so I think when we can, kind of back the lens up a little bit, and this is really going to get into acting is, there's a lot of different, a lot of different schools of acting.
Yeah,
and a lot of different schools.
That's what I was thinking about.
A lot of different schools of directing.
You're embodying the thing.
And Sean Bean might work that way, and then his co-star might not work that way. And his co-star might want a little bit more structure. There's some intimacy coordinators who are really anti-improvisation. I'm personally not. I've been an actor, I've been a director, a gaffer, I've been in production, I've been an EP, I've been lots of different things. And so I kind of have a holistic sense of the creative process and what each department is going through and what they want and what they need. And I feel like every move, every finger movement, every blink of an eye does not need to be choreographed, but we should know basically where's the scene starting, what's the middle of it, and what's the ending of it. If an actor is I'm just going to go off on my own and do my own lines because I feel like just improvising and everything has to be spontaneous and real all the time, that's just that argument kind of falls apart if you keep pulling at it, and keep kind of unraveling it, because
people.
You have to work with other people. There's a script to follow. There's a shot. You can't walk out of frame. If you felt like walking across the room, you're not going to walk off camera because you felt like doing that.
But it was a great comment because it sort of highlighted this category of comment. Jennifer Lawrence, the same thing. She was in Robert Pattinson with For Die My Love, and she's on the one hand being like, it's not weird. He's normal. He's a nice guy. So I didn't need any of that, you know? And similar, Gwyneth Paltrow famously talking about Marty Supreme. And she's very like, now there's something called an intimacy coordinator, which I did not even know existed. And, you know, you can step back. Like, it's just this world of people who are like, I survived the bad old days. I don't need this help. And maybe that's for some other people out there, but not me. In the world of Hollywood, they probably really appreciate it, right? Like, you can look at a young actress and be like, look, I did this so many years with such and such, and they never complained.
I actually hear a lot of hurt in those comments. I don't want to read into it too deeply, but, you know, yeah, they are kind of battle hardened, as you put it. You know, the number one on the call sheet, the star, probably does know what they're doing. And I would have a much different conversation with them than I would when number 50 on the call sheet comes in to do a scene with that star. I feel like this is just introducing a different level of sensitivity and care into the conversation. And that doesn't mean restriction. It just means like, hey, this can be awkward. Let's talk about it. I will say that the majority, I would say maybe minus a time, every actor who had not worked with an intimacy coordinator before, who I've worked with, says, I don't understand how we did this without you. Where were you when I was 19? Like, I've heard that from everyone across the board. And I've also heard, you know, on set working with the costumers, they're like, oh my God, thank God you're here, because this was my job. If an actor didn't want to do something, I would say to the director that, no, you can't do that with this person, because the actor would confide to the hair and makeup person or the wardrobe person that, you know, I'm feeling really uncomfortable about this particular scene. And so I'm just keep bringing it back to like, why not professionalize this aspect of the work? Why does every other department has a department? Like, it's like hair
I
and
figured
makeup.
they just didn't want to pay another person, to be honest. Sometimes when I hear the complaints, it sounds like, ugh, another set of lawyers and another conversation. I'm just barely getting this movie made.
Sure. Absolutely. But why are we cutting a corner on this particular thing? If that is the argument, like, why cut the corner here? Like, we're seeing this boom in like intimate scenes now. We're seeing heated rivalry. We're seeing like almost every film at Sundance had some kind of, you know, the film that I worked on at Sundance, Gregor Rocky's I Want Your Sex, to Olivia Wilde's The Invite, to, you know, like all of these like had really wonderful, complicated, complex, intimate sexual content. And I feel like that's been a real benefit that's showing up in an ROI. Like, if you're like studio side, like looking at like, you know, a return on investment, like.
But I also think, you know, I grew up in the 90s. There was lots of sex in films then. Some of the horror stories we're talking about now come from then. You know, Sharon Stone being upset about being asked to take her underwear off for Basic Instinct scene where she's just crossing her legs, right? Like, just nonsense things that were happening. Then we went through a period where everyone said, oh, we don't want to see so much sex. The Economist was finding out that in 2024, sex scenes down nearly 40% since 2000. I actually wonder if what we're seeing now, and even embracing the intimacy coordinator, has to do with the fact that the movies, as we know it, they cannot offer physical, technical sex that is more graphic or intense than porn. That's like not possible now, because there is just so much pornography and it's so available. So the thing they can make that's distinguishing would be intimacy, would be story and story-based sex.
Definitely. And you're right. I feel like, you know, the films of the 80s and 90s, not every film, obviously, but a lot of them, what you said earlier is like, okay, there's nudity to show nudity. Like, that was a sign that you were watching cable television, not network television.
Or even, you know, I saw The Postman Rings Twice. It felt like I was just watching two actors who had been told, go for it.
Right. And I think that when we watch that, also knowing the conditions that those films were likely made in, lots of stories about like one actor just going rogue and another actor just feeling like I just felt like I was completely violated on that set. But there's really a lot. Last Tango in Paris, 9.5 weeks. Like there's so many stories of particularly actresses who have felt just violated in those
Even recently, I think
situations.
Blue is the Warmest Color, which was supposed to be kind of a story about two young women. And of course, they've gone on in their careers and immediately said, oh, actually, that thing you all loved, like that sucked for us. We felt like we were performing for a man who wanted to like watch us make out.
And so now what we do is we talk about the scenes and we have clarity around what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And the story can stay the same. And again, it's not safe in that acting needs to feel safe. Like drama should feel dangerous, but it should feel dangerous from, from a performance standpoint, from the drama that you're watching standpoint, not because the actors were actually put into some kind of harm or danger.
Do you think that, like DEI, which has experienced a lot of backlash, this is an industry that you could see rolled back?
I feel like really the question is, again, like, do we want these scenes to be less professional or do we want them to be more professional? Do we want actors to feel more supported or less supported?
So we've talked about the conversation. We've talked about the administration. What is the thing you're actually doing that makes us think we're seeing sex on screen?
We could say like, why don't you like, open and close the distance between your hips and move your hips in a figure eight motion. Like we can absolutely use that type of language. But it's really like the way that I personally like to work is I like to get a sense of like what, take kind of the temperature on, listen to the way that the actors talk about it, listen to the way that the director talks about it as well. And try and neutralize the language a little bit so that it becomes a little bit more, from my end anyway, choreographic. And I will never like give acting notes. Like I will, that's the director and the actor's job to like worry about the performance and the acting. But if we're in a moment where we're watching the monitor and something isn't landing, or just from even just like a physical position, it does not look like the action that's happening on screen is not looking like it's realistic, for example. Like we can say, change this angle a little bit, slow this tempo a little bit, or start from a slow tempo and go to a fast tempo. Like there's like an entire language that we use to help bring out the realism and the story of these scenes. And honestly, like a lot of times, like the way that people engage, in their private life is not what's going to look good on camera either. There is a level of fiction to it. I mean, it's fiction. This is an art. We see this as an art form in the same way that like you want the best fight choreographer who's going to make your fights look amazing, or the stunt coordinator who's going to make your stunts look amazing. We bring a real level of artistry to this work.
What is the message you would have had looking back if you could like talk to the Yehuda 15 years ago? What would you have told him about what he was about to be doing?
I would have said, keep going. I would have said, keep going. Just keep doing it, which I did anyway. But I was doing this at a time when it was, no one really knew about it or knew what it was. I would have loved to find some of the other people that were doing this. This could be a very lonely job, actually. It's you. It's just you. It's you. You're a department of one. You're on set. You're sort of like this new thing that some people want and some people don't want. Some people appreciate and some people don't know what you do. I started this work in 2007. Like that's literally the year I'm dating myself here, but like that's the year the iPhone came out. Like it was the word consent was in the dictionary, but it was not part of our like cultural dialogue. And so I would have loved to have more people who kind of understood the importance of what this was so that it didn't feel so lonely.
The irony of a job about intimacy being lonely
Yeah, it's
is
true.
is not lost, right? Like your one job is to connect and show people how to at least mimic connection. And yeah, you're at craft services by yourself.
Yes, that's totally true. I've also had a lot of, I've had some interesting experiences where, someone in an unrelated department will come up to me and say, like, you're the intimacy coordinator, right? I'll say, yeah. He's be like, I'm having this relationship issues and I'm wondering if you can help me out.
Relationship issues or
Yeah.
like physical intimacy issues?
I mean, I've had both. I'm good. The title of my memoir is going to be "I Don't Know Why I'm Telling You This," because I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, "I don't know why I'm telling you this," and then really sort of open up about really personal, deep things. And I think the fact that we are on set, we are people who are generally pretty comfortable with the idea of intimacy. We're very well versed in the spectrum of human sexuality from vanilla to kink to relationship styles to all sorts of things that we learn about to do this job well. And I think that there's a level of discomfort that our culture in particular in the US has with intimacy and sexuality. Like there's just so much shame in this
I agree.
culture.
I mean, that's actually why I care so much about the modern depictions. People have heard me talk on the show about heated rivalry and how, like, my theory is people like it because it depicts intimacy almost more than just physical sex.
Yeah,
Like we don't see it
falling in
modeled
love.
very much. Yeah, like how do you have a conversation when you're in love? How do you have a conversation when you're in lust? How do you do? I have to assume we're having a problem with this, or else the manosphere wouldn't exist, right? Like there are so many people, even incel culture, like all of that is about the inability to understand how to functionally connect. And so, yeah, I guess I can picture people sort of saddling up to you and
Like we are beings who are wired for intimacy. And we live in a culture that completely disconnects us from it and shames us for it. And shames us for wanting it, needing it, learning how to discover it, having a language around it, having, a decent sexual education in this country that goes beyond just, what are the molecules that are reproducing in your body? Like, what is intimacy? What is relation? Like, how do people relate? What are the different ways that people relate? And we're seeing so many more stories lately about the different ways that people connect and relate. I think what's so beautiful about heated rivalry is that there's this hidden thing that has to happen. Like they have to keep this thing a secret. And they're also discovering these new things about themselves. Like that's a very universal story. Like we all have discovered something about ourselves throughout our lives that has been scary or unknown, or no matter what your sexual orientation is. Those stories of intimacy are the ones that are interesting. It's not, it's not just nudity for nudity's sake or sex for sex sake. I feel like
yeah,
it's
because if that was it, you wouldn't have this generation that is less inclined to have sex, right? You wouldn't have all this reporting of like younger people who haven't had sex in X amount of months and also haven't been in a relationship, or
yeah.
people who are in a cycle of apps where they have kind of sex on demand, but they don't have this other thing you're talking about, which is like the intimacy.
I feel like for younger generations now, just the idea of how to connect with another person is actually really scary. And it goes into a lot of like just cultural politics that are happening right now as well. I feel like there's just a real kind of breakdown of trust and a breakdown of understanding of how to connect.
Kind of reminds me of how high the stakes are. The stakes are if we don't see things modeled for us that are healthy, we're like doomed to all these other things, the like trust issues and the loneliness issue and the inability to connect. Like some of those things, and I believe really strongly in storytelling, will never match the amount of porn that's out there in the world. But I don't think there's anything wrong with occasionally having storytelling and description of this part of our lives. So, Yehuda, I really appreciate you talking to me about this. I know it's not easy because there's like a lot of little spiky aspects of it, but I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot.
I'm so happy to speak with you, Audie. Thank you.